I am ecstatic about eating these puppies. There's an out route. Oh, it's picked!
Are you kidding me? It's a scrum in the middle of the field. And there's Gibson just pulling his way through that entire War Eagles defense.
On his senior night, Chaplin escapes. What a start with a touchdown.
Leaning tower of pretzels.
Welcome into Piedmont Powwow with Mark Covert. I'm Evan Budrovich. High school football is off and running. We're now in the second half of the season. We want to take a quick moment and send our thoughts and prayers to anyone affected by Hurricane Helene all across the Southeast, and especially our friends in the Asheville, the Boone, the mountain areas of the state. Visit Red Cross online. There's many organizations that are both faith-related and geographically helpful that you can obviously donate parish goods and money and anything you can to help. And including at our game this Friday, there'll be a donation opportunity. But Mark, how about this football game? The lone top 10 matchup in the state. East Forsyth, that's won a state title in 18 and 19. And here comes Mount Tabor, who's won a title at the 3A level in 2021. And you could argue in the last 5 years, these are their best programs now matching up for basically the CPC title.
If you want star power, come to our game on Friday night or watch us online on YouTube, Facebook, on TV if you want to do it that way. I mean, it is a star-studded matchup all the way from the players on the field to the coaches on the sideline. This is the premier matchup, not just within our area, Evan, but throughout the entire state. It is going to be a dazzling display of skill, strategy, talent, and some pretty good teams at that, put together by some really great coaching staffs.
We like to start with quarterbacks. Mark played offensive line in college. I played defense in high school and junior college. So we have differences there. But from a quarterback position, first of all, Bryce Baker, the number one rated quarterback in the state. He's East Forsyth's multiple-year starter. Last year, we saw a shaky offensive line and some penalties that made Bryce – he was fantastic, but there were times he'd have to scramble out of the pocket, make a lot of plays. Well, Mark, they've solidified the O-line, and now Baker, not only the best quarterback in the state, he's putting up numbers that put him among the best in the country right now.
Well, and it's because that offensive line, like you said, Evan, has solidified. Not just that, but it's also been able to give the running game outside of Bryce Baker some room to work with. So all of a sudden, when you have that pressure taken off of you and you have a running game that's supporting you and doing its best to carry some of that load offensively, it opens up those passing lanes for you as a quarterback. It allows you to see the field better because you don't have all those defenders up around the line of scrimmage and bringing pressure constantly. Once you get past that stuff and you're able to sit back there and survey, that's where Bryce Baker is at now. He's able to take a look at the lay of the land and distribute the football amongst a really great core of receivers as well. But again, that offensive line has done an excellent job of paving the road on the ground and then giving Bryce Baker in this passing game protection as well when they do drop back to pass. And it's led to yet another efficient offense for East Forsyth.
Baker is a senior this year. He leads the state in total touchdowns. He scored 19 times in 5 games, so you can do the math from there. And what's even crazier, so this is now 3 years as a high school starting quarterback, 54 touchdowns to only 4 picks, Mark. And you know, it doesn't matter what level you're at. When that's the ratio, 50-4, you're doing something right.
Pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. Again, you can try to put some of that on coaching, which the scheme does matter. You can say that, well, it's the players around him, which that will always matter. And it matters for any quarterback. If you don't have the scheme that fits you and you don't have the players around you, you don't have the coaches around you, you're probably not going to succeed. But at a certain point, you got to look at it at an individual level and realize, hey, this kid over here is pretty good. And Bryce Baker is way more than pretty good. You talk about elite arm talent, a guy who can spin the pill a little bit, get it down the field, but also manage the game well. When we were talking to Coach Todd Willard of East Forsyth, he said that as much, like understanding that, look, if you check it down to a running back, that's okay because we're moving the football. And that just means he's understanding the offense more. He's grasping those concepts from the mental side of the game and not just going out there and acting on instincts. That is what's going to continue to develop for him. And as he goes forward into the rest of this season and into his collegiate career, if he continues to have that development on the mental and emotional side of the game, as well as the physical part, which we know is going to be there, the sky's the limit for this young man, and I'm excited to see what he does on Friday night.
He's a North Carolina commit. And you think of the last two quarterbacks, Sam Howell, who played with the Commanders for quite some time, or the Washington football team, and what Drake May has done now as the number 3 overall pick. Like, that's the lineage for Baker, who slides in. And with some uncertainty at the Carolina quarterback position, I wouldn't be shocked, just as an aside, that he makes things happen as a freshman. But, Mark, this receiving core, now, if you don't know East Forsyth football, there's a guy named Javante Carter who signed with Lane Kiffin. He's now bounced around to ECU and some other schools, but he was a 3-star commit. They've had elite talent, Q Sean Brown, who now plays at Duke, and he actually scored a touchdown in the Duke comeback win over Carolina. Like, that is the lineage of receivers. And here comes Jai Richburg and JP Gilchrist, who are an elite 1-2 combination.
They sure are. And really quick, don't forget about Mitch Trubisky in there, number 2 overall pick back in the day. So another quarterback for the Tar Heels that makes his name. But again, Gilchrist being what he is, I mean, he had such a dimension to this offense, and having a 1-2 punch like that, where you have guys who complement each other very well. They do have different skill sets, where you've got guys that can stretch the field and go down the field, or guys who can take those quick shots underneath or over the middle. I mean, when you've got a receiving core that can run the route tree and give you those different concepts, as a quarterback, you can't ask for much more than that. They give you options. You just got to sit back there, have your line give you that protection, and find the open guy. And this is what we expect of East Forsyth and Todd Willard in this offense. I mean, they are as explosive as we may have ever seen, Evan. And that's scary, man, because you think about, like you said, not just the lineage of players on an individual level, but what East Forsyth is and the brand that they have built and the expectations they have. It just seems like every year, not only do they not bow down to those expectations, they plow right through them. And somehow it almost feels like each team year after year is better than the last on paper. But so far, 5-0 record, unblemished, and they have steamrolled through their competition through the first 5 games of their season.
We talked to Todd Willard this week. He noted the depth of the offensive line, which you'll notice that in second halves, in the running game, and the splits are nearly even. 300 yards passing a game. And this team in the past wouldn't run for 200. Now with Jalen Murray and this JV running back, Cannon Rottweiler, who hadn't played varsity at all till the second week of the year this year, like, they have some stable running backs now to complement this great passing game.
They do. And wearing down that defense in the second half has been a big attribute of what's led to this team's success. When you know you can throw the ball deep, and that's where the game of football has gone now, right? Like, it's more finesse. You have the spread offenses. You want the big chunk plays through the air. But when you're able to physically impose your will on an entire team, offensively and defensively, that's a different feeling. And East Forsyth can do that, which, like you noted, they haven't been able to do that nearly as much in years past. A lot of the running game came down to what a quarterback was doing. Remember Jalen Rayner when he was there, very special. Now the starter at Arkansas State. He was a special quarterback, and he had the physical physique to make that happen. A lot of guys don't have that. So you have to have a stable running game in the traditional sense. And that is what East Forsyth has now. They've got running backs who can tote the rock, go the distance, work in short yardage. They've got guys that can do it on every level now. And that has helped this offense now take off and reach a new level from what we've seen in the last couple of years.
It's an offense that scores 55 points a game. So as you're gearing up for Friday, just know this is a top 5 team in the state. Yes, on the other side of the football, Mark, from an offensive standpoint, we'll talk Mount Tabor defense. Yeah. There are stars for Mount Tabor. And it starts with Jadon Blair, who's a top 10 recruit in the state. He's going to Notre Dame, following Marcus Freeman next year. And he's joined by Snook Peterkin. And I tell you what, there are elite athletes in the state. We bash and we speak so highly of certain running backs and certain receivers, but the all-around attributes of Snook Peterkin, I don't know if he'll be the player Jadon Blair is in college, but he is my most favorite player to watch in high school football.
I think easily within the area, probably the best two-way player we see. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to the Piedmont's Travis Hunter. That's Snook Peterkin, a guy who offensively can go after the football, a weapon in every sense of the word, receiving, running, passing. He's an adept passer. We saw him do it a couple times later in the last couple of years. And then defensively, he's a shutdown corner, great safety over the top. I mean, he's a guy that not only plays those two positions, Evan, he doesn't leave the field. I mean, this is a kid who wants to stay on the field at all times. And Tyshawn Brown, their head coach over there at Mount Tabor, told us that too. And we've seen it in the past. That's just a work ethic thing. That's not something you teach. I mean, that's someone wanting to go out there, get better every single day, and understanding that every time they're on the field, they can help their team out. So as long as Snook Peterkin's on the field, they're going to be safe. Jadon Blair is an entirely different animal. This is a kid who pure safety, and Marcus Freeman has to be gushing, knowing that he's got a prospect like that coming to South Bend next year. Really great deep safety, great in the box when he's needed as well, tracks the ball well through the air. If there is a defense in the area that has a chance to stymie and slow down the East Forsyth offense, it's Mount Tabor. And they're going to be up to that challenge, certainly, when we see them on Friday. They've got a tall task, but you could say the exact same thing for East Forsyth going against a very tenacious Spartans defense.
This is a matchup of really good middle linebackers as well. Nathan Stewart at East Forsyth, he had 100 tackles last year, and that guy just flies sideline to sideline, right? And then you mentioned Tabor, obviously the safeties and the corners are really good, but Malik Garrison, he's like 220. He's built like Hercules out there. You know, we shine at receiver a lot, but I think this matchup could be won at the linebacking position too.
I think this is probably one of the first games that we've had, in all honesty, in a while, where you can go position by position on each side and be like, hey, this kid's a stud, this kid's a stud. And you're going tick for tack the whole way down the depth chart and the whole way through those positions on the field. I mean, it's linebackers fast, instinctual, agile, fly through boxes, but they're not afraid to get a little physical. Don't get it wrong. When you hear sideline to sideline, maybe you think, oh, well, that guy's maybe a little afraid of contact and he's quick, but what happens when he gets hit in the mouth? These linebackers are up to the task, and they are going to do their best to make their presence felt against very strong rushing attacks as well. You talk about the front seven for each team. They've got to set the tone early on. And a lot of the times that starts with your linebackers and how they're getting guys lined up, how they're setting that tone just from a verbal standpoint and an action standpoint. They're going to be a focal point for both teams defensively on Friday.
Mount Tabor this year, very fortunate to your point, Mark. Matthias Banks, who was injured in the very first game last year, he is back on that D-line, and he'll play in college somewhere. Yep. That's to be determined, but he's a college player. And then they have an anchor in the middle, John Coles, who's their starting left tackle and their starting DN, right? And this is the part about high school we love. Tabor's not as deep as East, but from an 11v11 standpoint, they have the bodies to compete.
They sure do. I mean, again, tick for tack across the board. You want to go down the starters. I mean, they're right there even with each other. And about as even as either team is going to see on the other side of the football from them, potentially all year, at least going into the postseason. Tabor obviously has played Grimsley the first week of the season. That's the only blemish on their record so far. Tyshawn Brown did that intentionally. Even with the scrimmages before the season this year, he wanted them to experience teams that were physical, that had different styles instead of just the spread. And now he's going to see that. We know that Mount Tabor under Tyshawn Brown, they're going to be tough. They're going to be physical. They're going to be hard-nosed, and they are coming to play some old-school style of football every single snap of every single game. And that's what Tabor has. They got guys who are going to not back down. They're going to smash you in the mouth, and they're going to continue to get after you until that whistle blows and there's zeros on the scoreboard at the end of the fourth quarter. It's not going to stop regardless of whether they're winning or losing. And I think that's what we see on Friday, is a very different contrast of styles where you've got East Forsyth, which is more spread it out, run. We're trying to get our guys in space. And Mount Tabor, like, hey, we're right here at the line of scrimmage. You're going to have to meet us there. And that's the exciting part. When you start seeing these contrasting styles going against each other, it creates for a lot of fun matchups.
It's our lone top 10 matchup in the state, not just here in the Winston-Salem, Greensboro area, but the entire state. There is no better matchup than this Friday with Mount Tabor, who just climbed into the top 10 after beating a really good West Forsyth team.
Yep.
And then, remember, with the weather issues, they played Monday and pitched a shutout, 45-0, and we'll have to come back on Friday. So that's the one area where East has a little bit of an advantage.
And it's kind of weird because East does have it where they played last Thursday. So they've upped their game up. They've got a little bit extra rest. So you have East resting, and you've got Tabor coming down, and they played on Monday. So now you got to ask yourself, well, do you come in and you want to be a little hotter? You're a little warmed up this week after already played a game. If you're Tabor, Or do you want that extra day's worth of rest before you go into a physical matchup? Honestly, I think it almost plays into both teams' hands. Tabor wants to stay hot. They want to stay locked in. They know they had to immediately after Monday's game. East has a little bit of time to relax, be like, hey, let's lick our wounds, let's get right. And we have that one extra day where we can rest and get ready for a physical football game that we know we're walking into on the road. It's so tough to go into games like this and think, man, like this team has an advantage here, this team has an advantage here. And there's not maybe a couple of spots for each side, but everywhere else, it's neck and neck. And we've got a tightly contested ball game. I'm not sure it could really go either way. Usually, Evan, we go into matchups and think, okay, offenses are really good. We're going to see a little bit of a show here tonight. Or, hey, defenses are pretty locked down. I think we're going to see a bit of a struggle. This could go either way. I mean, it kind of felt like the coaches this week were under the impression that it's going to be a game where you got to score points to win. And if that's the case, we're in for a show that way too, because these offenses are both special.
Last 2 years, games in the regular season have come down to 1 point and 1 score.
Yeah.
So they've both been really close.
Yep.
And I want to keep in mind, because we talked Bryce Baker. He is an amazing football player. He's an amazing student. He had a great post on Instagram this week about the 2 Carolina Classic trophies he's won over Mount Tabor. Like, this kid really he is the perfect figurehead for East Forsyth football. And then there's Lane Albright, who by no means is chopped liver. He just signed with Davidson, good FCS program.
Yep.
Mark, the growth for him, he's a running quarterback who has developed his arm. And this is the missing piece for Tabor. Last year, he wasn't as ready to read the defense, make plays. And now his vision has helped this offense move.
He's going to fit really good with Davidson, by the way. They run a nice little option offense down there. So having his mobility down there is going to be a huge boon for what they do. But no, I mean, Lane Albright is a great quarterback in his own right. We can talk about Bryce Baker until we're blue in the face. And I'm sure you will hear people all around the area, all around the state, and in certain parts of the country do the same thing because he is a special player. Lane Albright is a guy who has come along more and more. I mean, even when we saw them in back-to-back weeks last year, kind of struggled when we saw them against East Forsyth last year. Very next week, they play Davie County, and we just see a completely different player in that game from Lane Albright. Now, coaching staff feels like he understands the system more. You get a full off season to get this kid under your program and into your system, and it's paid dividends. Right now, quarterback spot, they're getting a lot of production out of what Albright is bringing to that offense, and it's been fun to watch. He's going to have to go realistically tick for tack with one of the best quarterbacks in the country on Friday night, but he has a supporting cast, he has the coaching staff, and he has the knowledge to make that happen. He's just got to go out there and perform at a certain level.
I want to make sure I get these quotes right about the Mount Tabor running backs. So head coach Tyshawn Brown, he said, Zion Thompson runs like his mom's life depends on it. So that's number 0, Thompson. Kamari Shell, he hydrates like Adam Sandler in The Water Boy and never cramps. So he's got 2 workhorse running backs and some great lines to empathize these running backs. But, Mark, we say East 50 points a game. Tabor doesn't have that level of explosiveness, but they control the game. They control the clock. We saw last year they're one Snook Peterkin first down away from winning that game.
Yep.
And with his mobility, and then Blair can break tackles. Like, this is an offense that can go 10 plays and work the clock too.
Very complimentary football team. When you talk about the offense to the defense, hard-nosed, want to get out the field. They're going to bring pressure. They're going to be smash mouth. We know that. But the offense is maybe less ball control than what we've seen the last couple years, but they are going to run to set up the pass. To use the old cliche for all the offenses out there, they want to run the football, and they want to still be physical on that side. Offensive line is going to fire off. These running backs are going to keep those legs churning down the field, and they set up those shots they can take through the air with Albright and Peterkin and all the guys that they have to throw to there. So it is certainly a team that complements each other well. You have a defense that usually comes back on the field. They're rested because you have a ball control offense that sustains drives, gives them time to catch a breather, and then get back out there and dominate again and get the ball back to their offense. So it's a team that plays very good complementary football to both sides of the ball, and they've been fantastic so far because of it.
And lastly, from a playoff and state perspective, so Tabor was 0-3 in the league last year in the Central Piedmont Conference. They had to win every game at the end of the year. then they upset your high school Mooresville and get another win over Davie County, and they go to the third round, right? And this is a team where you go, who's that club who's going to push into the region final, make that push to the fourth round? To me, it's Tabor. And for East Forsyth, we've noted the titles in 18 and 19. They came up a little short against Huff in the third round, and they see themselves now as, we want to be a top 5 seed and host all the way to a region final.
This is a big game for both sides and for different reasons, because Mount Tabor is trying to get to where East Forsyth is. I mean, they are the team that came up from 3A. They had a state title, feeling really good. And they've had some good years since they've come up as well. They've certainly shown that they are a quality 4A program. But then how do you take that next step? And that's going and beating a team of East Forsyth's caliber. That's certainly going to deliver a message around the state saying, hey, we probably need to pay a little more attention to what Mount Tabor is doing, because they just went and knocked off a perennial power at home in a game that really was up in the air from a talent standpoint. For them, it's about getting there. For East, it's about how do we maintain that standard and get back to being a true championship program. It's been a couple of years for East, and Todd Willard, I know he is hungry. I mean, you can see it when we talk to Todd. There's a certain hunger that lingers around him, and you can tell he's ready to get another title under his belt. So they want to get back to the state title level that they are used to, and Tabor wants to get to where East Forsyth is and where they are consistently considered amongst those powerful teams. This game has just as much at stake as any other game being played this Friday. Top 10 matchup in the state. Those seedings are going to be massive, and you're going to see it. I think right now Tabor is slated as the 13th seed through the state playoffs right now.
Right.
East Forsyth is easily a top 5 seed at the moment. But if Tabor is able to come out here and they pull out the win, those are going to drastically change for their positions, because that's going to send a huge message out to the rest of the state and, of course, the voters and everyone who's putting those polls together.
What a neat matchup we have coming up. From a ranking standpoint, you have 3 of the top 10 players in the state, Baker, Peterkin, Blair. So if you want star power, we have that. If you love an intense rivalry, like the last 4 years, all these games have been one score. Typically, it's been the battle for first or second in a league that sends 4 teams a year in the Central Piedmont. And then what I always love, too, there's this sense of chip on their shoulder, Mount Tabor, who has overperformed as a smaller 4A team.
Sure.
And East Forsyth, that has been the kings of 4A football for about 5 years on the western side of the state. Mm-hmm. Can they reclaim glory? Yeah. And this type of win puts them mano a mano with Grimsley and Weddington as who is the number 1 seed in the state, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I mean, Grimsley and Weddington are just sitting there, and you're waiting to see if there's like a third team that emerges. And I think the winner of this game, in a lot of people's eyes, will become that third team. Who's going to be the main challenger for Grimsley? Who's going to become the main challenger for Weddington? And we may not know. We may not know that they have a real challenger, but this is the winner of this game then becomes that team where people sit back and say, if there is someone that takes down Grimsley or if there is someone that takes down Weddington, it is either Mount Tabor or East Forsyth because of what they did on Friday night. So this is a massive, massive matchup.
And lastly, you can watch the game 7:30 on my 48. Mark, the Carolina Classic Fair starts this week.
Oh,
and
buddy.
You know what that means.
Oh, buddy.
It is time to eat. Obviously, go to the fair. It's right at the fairgrounds in Winston-Salem by Wake Forest campus. You know where to find it. But, Mark, we're getting treated to some food this week. Not just buckets. There's going to be pizzas, pies, some surprises I don't even know about. And you know, there's a lot of fun stuff we do during the year. But eating food at halftime is probably number 2.
If you missed it last year, we had about 2 weeks where we started doing this with the fair going on. And, you know, it got a little weird in some spots. Evan shoved cotton candy in my mouth on live television. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen this year? Again, he said there might be buckets involved. We don't know. Fair food's always wild, but certainly come and join us. I mean, we're going to have a great time. And I know you and we're both foodies. We're all about it. I think we're ready to see what the Carolina Classic Fair has lined up for us the next 2 weeks.
Carolina Classic Fair, best time of the year, my friend. Hey, we'll
Yes,
see you guys Friday, and then next week more food. But this week we got a treat of a football game too. We'll talk to y'all soon.
I am ecstatic about eating these puppies. There's an out route. Oh, it's picked!
Are you kidding me? It's a scrum in the middle of the field. And there's Gibson just pulling his way through that entire War Eagles defense.
On his senior night, Chaplin escapes. What a start with a touchdown.
Leaning tower of pretzels.
Oh,